Patel, great to be here. You are a low-tax Tory in your bones. You campaigned against the rise in corporation tax. So how do you feel about Jeremy Hunt's budget today?
So, Dan, thank you for coming over to Westminster today. And obviously it's budget day. There is a lot going on. There've been many announcements around the budget. But you're absolutely right. You know, as a Thatcherite Conservative, a low-tax Conservative, I always speak about, you know, the plight of hard-pressed taxpayers. There are some really important things, actually, that have been announced today around taxation, in particular business taxes. And of course, I have been campaigning to actually stop the corporation tax increases. And importantly, alongside that, there's another corporation tax measure, which is the OECD minimum rate of corporation tax, which is really problematic because actually that impacts upon our tax sovereignty and the ability of our government to determine our rates of corporation tax.
Which is the whole point that we voted to leave the European Union.
And to take back control and Brexit. So today's announcements obviously have big implications, but you are also aware that the Chancellor has announced a package of £9 billion of support for businesses.
Which was positive.
So it is positive, and I've spoken in the debate today as well, but I think there are some important things that we should actually, some pointers, some questions that still need to be asked about this. Number one, to lower taxes, we need simpler taxes. We don't need to bring in more burdens, bureaucracy, regulations, so that you put taxes up over here and then say, we'll do a bit of an umbrella by bringing in various measures to soften it. Because all that means is that, quite frankly, all the businesses, it's different if you're a large corporate or corporation. If you're a SME in Whittam or Essex or anywhere around the country, you don't have the time all the resources to employ more tax specialists, more lawyers, to actually look at all of that. You need cash, you need money basically to get on, invest, grow your business, etc., etc. So I am concerned about that, and I have said that today as well.
And you spoke with Jeremy Hunt personally,
So
didn't you?
I have, absolutely. I actually saw Jeremy Hunt, and I also spoke in the debate today, and the Chancellor was there.
Is he listening to you?
I'm going to give Jeremy a lot of credit, actually. Jeremy's been very good to work with in the run-up to the budget. He does listen and he does engage, and he knows effectively the case that I've been making, not just on the increase of corporation tax, but also the implications of the OECD rate, the minimum rate of corporation tax, because as we know, our friends around the world are basically, they press the pause button on it. So the challenge back, and I've said it again today to Jeremy, is that we cannot keep on trying to be the first mover on this. There's no benefit for us. By all means, carry on doing the work if you have to. We should not be rushing into this at all. I mean, I just don't think we should be doing this full stop. I'm very clear about that. We should be an independent government when it comes to taxation. We should be sovereign in control of our own taxes. Ironically, in the same way in which both the Chancellor and the Prime Minister are referring to tax decisions in Northern Ireland now, post the Windsor Agreement. So, you know, we have got more work to do on this. I believe that, you know, the Conservative Party is nothing if we do not stand up for low taxes.
No,
but
and there's
with
an
that,
election.
Dan,
There's an election coming up, and that is one of my concerns. How do you differentiate yourself from Labour when there are a lot of big state policies and high tax policies?
Well, I believe we can. For a start, we can. We're not like Labour in so many ways. We're just not like Labour. But I was going to say that, you know, the key thing about being, you know, Conservatives is sound money. And that also means, I'm afraid, tackling some of the hard things, you know, state spending, size of the state, debt to GDP ratio, for example. And that is where we have to focus. And you can only do that by growing the economy, creating more jobs, support for businesses, lower taxes. And I think we are at that stage right now where we've got to get that rebalancing right. So Jeremy's on the right pathway. Corporation tax is a big issue, and it's here to stay, and it's not going to go away. And he's heard me say as well, I'm going to continue making the representations. But we've got to flip this round, because currently, as we know, debt up here, that's government borrowing, everything else, government spending, a reflection of how much government is spending. Tax take, businesses, etc., businesses still being clobbered, and we're not growing the base enough.
It wasn't all negative today by any means. Some real positives. One that you have been campaigning hard on relates to fuel duty,
That's right.
and it was frozen again, which was a huge relief to me, because it does feel like around the world there is an increasing war on the motorist.
So I agree. I always have done on this. And, you've got to remember, back in the day, I was Exchequer Secretary a long time ago. I've had the privilege of working in the Treasury. These things are difficult to square and balance. But at the end of the day, the good things that have come out of this budget are in relation to people. And that is hard-pressed motorists. We have to stand up for them. There's no doubt about that. We need them. They're the backbone to our economy. They employ people. They create jobs. And again, white van man, for want of a better term, people that get up at the crack of dawn, get in their motors and actually drive into London to work.
Yeah, and Sadiq Khan wants to make their life miserable.
And you asked about the differentiation between Labour. ULEZ, rotten London Labour boroughs, policies like ULEZ, that's effectively discriminatory against hard-pressed motorists, people that go to work every single day, get in their vans, provide goods and services to London, to buildings like this, to restaurants, to hotels, the carpenters, the plumbers, etc. We have to be their voice and we have to be their champion.
So that was a positive. And I also thought the pension reform was a step in the right direction too. Do you agree?
Totally. And that's why I say people, their savings, giving us the freedom to get on and live our lives, unshackling us from those regulations.
Also positive, the childcare reforms, which seems to have really taken the wind out of Slippery Starmer's sails today.
So I think this is, it's very important. Back in the day, I set up the policy around tax-free childcare. Which was complex and difficult, and it's moved on, and obviously it's now going really well. This is about broadening now through the age range of children and parents and households that can qualify for it. Childcare costs a fortune. In some parts of the country, it's the equivalent to a mortgage.
So you've given Hunt a pass mark.
So I think Jeremy has done a really good job, actually, off the back of, number one, an OBR, let's remember this, last November, that read like, doom and gloom encyclopedia, so pessimistic. And I say this, having been a Treasury Minister, I've experienced a few fiscal events, while also getting the balance right so we can support businesses and individuals.
Now, look, we need to talk about migration. OBR figures released today show 250,000 net migration. Looks like it's going to become a regular thing. Now, of course, that issue is being very much conflated with the scourge of the people smugglers and the illegal immigration, which obviously we can't deal with as a country. So are you concerned about this 250,000 figure, or do you think we're getting the right people in legally?
So it's twofold. Number one, we must never conflate, legitimate migration, legal migration with illegal migration. Illegal migration is literally the broken system, the people smugglers, all the work that the government is working on now and the work that I was doing as well, and I'll come on to that in a minute. Legal migration was the points-based immigration system, the reforms that we brought in, 2019 general election when we said we'd have an Australian-style points-based immigration system. We now have a British points-based immigration system, and I think people have forgotten about that.
Because we're getting the right people in.
So the purpose of that system is that you have to be sponsored by an employer. We've always said, you have to be sponsored. It's about your skills. It's not where you came from. It's not about the colour of your passport. You remember how EU citizens were favoured compared to the rest of the world. High-skilled individuals with the type of skills that we do not have in this country. And by the way, Dan, they pay the immigration health surcharge, which is in the thousands of pounds. They pay thousands of pounds for their visas. They tend to be very significant net contributors to our economy because they pay their taxes. And many of them in the skills sector are high-rate taxpayers. So actually, we should be thinking about the contribution they make.
Obviously, as you point out, the big problem is illegal migration, and you must know the concerns of your constituents. Hotels overflowing, it's costing us so much money, communities are being torn apart. Obviously, you created the Rwanda Scheme, which has thus far been scuppered. Do you think the government is on the right track when it comes to stopping the boats?
So importantly, on the Economic Migration Partnership with Rwanda, that is the first ever in the world, and it will be world class. It's been established for very good reasons. primarily because I wanted to raise the bar around this entire debate and narrative around resettlement and refugees. You know, there is a view in the world, and actually it stems from Europe as well, that there is a fixed way of how we address illegal migration and refugees, and I think they've got it wrong. The European Union got it completely wrong. And Rwanda, they are a fantastic partner in the way in which they believe in investing in the individuals that are resettled in Rwanda. We invest in their skills. That is the money that we've given the government of Rwanda in terms of housing, skills training and development so that they can resettle and rebuild their lives there. That is a good thing. And we've set the bar, I think, pretty high internationally. Whereas
So it's a humane policy, isn't it?
It's firm, Dan, it's firm, very firm, but it's fair.